badges as a step to connect people, Girl Scouts to astronomers. We also did some great girl experiences like sending people to the eclipse and having camps at observatories, but connecting the Girl Scouts and the astronomers is what led to the workshop. And so next slide, please. We sort of developed this workshop called Confidence and Curiosity, Girls at the Telescope. And what that is a sharing of best practices on how to do girl-friendly outreach. And it was really well received by the 300 plus people that attended. And so as the grant was drawing to an end, we wanted to make some evergreen resources of these same skills, tips, and techniques. And so we created 5 videos. I think that's on the next slide. Yes. So this is our video series that we made. It's an evergreen series. They're on YouTube. They're all really short, less than 5 minutes, and they can show you some techniques that you can do right away in your next public engagement section. So if you have outreach coming up at the for Astronomy Month, take a look. Pick one and just make one small change in the outreach that you're doing right now. Lindsay, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so one of the reasons that it was really important, especially during GAM, Global Astronomy Month, for us to run a program like this, is that internationally, women and girls are underrepresented in STEM fields and specifically in astronomy. Astronomers Without Borders has recently begun surveying our membership, and we've noted that we have far fewer female identifying members, fewer than 20% who answered our most recent survey. And also, but 80% of our survey participants indicated that they felt it was extremely important or very important for AWB to provide programs which encourage the participation of women or girls in astronomy and outreach. So this is one step in that direction. And yeah, we're just really happy to be here to share these resources with you, and of course are looking forward to even more practice and engagement in this area. All right, so just to jump right into the topic, I'm sure no matter who you are, no matter what your experiences have been, you can probably think back to a time, imagine a time when you felt excluded from a group or an activity, even if the people doing it weren't being intentional about it. They may have really great intentions and you just felt left out because of something that was done or said. And if you are joining us, as Harry is here in our Zoom, or if you're joining us online, feel free to share those comments in the chat, and we'll just give you a minute to think about that story and maybe share a little bit. Since this is our first question, I'll go ahead and get started. I know that as I've had the opportunity to visit sort of older observatories and departments of astronomy, many times there's only restrooms for women on every other floor. And while it's not really a big deal, and fortunately I have the mobility to be able to travel to use the restroom whenever I need to, it is sort of that reminder that there was a time not so very long ago when there just weren't as many women in the field. And it's just a little bit of that reminder that I might have been excluded if this were just a few years different in time. Does anyone else have any other examples they'd like to share? Harry, go ahead.
A lot of the oh, go ahead, Harry. Sorry.
No, if you want to carry on, I don't mind.
Happy to hear from you. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that here in the United Kingdom, it has actually become a political statement, the fact there are very few female and feminine identifying people in STEM. It has even got so bad that the BBC channel CBeebies, which is aimed at 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, have now got identified programs where the lead character is a female identifying person involved in STEM, the program being Bits and Bobs, where it is the girl who comes up with the inventions, not the big burly man or her little brother.
Thanks. Go ahead, Teresa. What were you?
Thanks for sharing that. When we asked this question in the workshop, one of the things that came up a lot is because we identify with our jobs so much, at least folks in the US, a lot of people shared when they went to, heard about a meeting after it was over. And I think also because in a very stereotypical way, our field is not filled with athletes per se. A lot of folks shared that they remember times when they weren't picked first, going back to their early childhood, that they weren't chosen for a team. And I think we all have experiences of feeling excluded or not welcome that we can sort of extrapolate to the experiences that women, girls, and other underrepresented folks might feel at an event.
Right. And that was exactly the point I was about to make, is that, no matter your experience, you can empathize with girls or other represented folks who, and you may want to change your practice to make an event that you host or an outreach activity more inclusive. And so this time that we're spending together today is meant to draw your attention to some of these issues and to give you some strategies to use at your next event to help make everyone feel more welcome. All right, and so that's exactly what our goals for today are, to help you who are watching us, either live or after the fact, to increase your knowledge of issues or skills surrounding STEM education for girls and women. We left the women off the slide somehow. And then also to encourage you all to implement a particular technique or strategy that in a future program to improve its effectiveness for girls. All right, I do want to point out, as the ASP staff here have introduced, there is a whole series of videos, and they can all be found in this YouTube playlist. We'll make sure to post this to our online community. So if you're a member, even a free member, you can log in, find the link, or certainly you can search YouTube to find it, if this URL is a little long for you. But anyway, the series is called Confidence and Curiosity, Girls at the Telescope, and you can see there's several videos here. Today we're going to be exploring 2 of them, so there will be more tips for you to follow up on later. All right, so we're going to get started with our first video, which is about asking and answering questions. So as an introduction, we'd like you to think of a question that you, as a facilitator, might typically ask during an outreach or a star party event. And so if you want to go ahead and either put that in the chat, or if you would like to say one out loud, Andrew, Harry, anyone on Facebook, we can read your comments there as well. All right, so Harry asks often, can you identify the pole star, or what we might sometimes call the North Star? That's a great one. Andrew, do you have any questions? You facilitate a lot.
Well, simple. Sometimes depending on the age, like have people been on Mars? I'm showing Mars through the telescope. Have people actually been on Mars, or how cold does it get on Mars? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Great. All right. So this video I'm about to introduce talks about some of the questions that might come up and ways to make sure that you're inclusive as you ask those questions. All right, so give me just a moment.
As science communicators, we get asked a lot of questions. So we might be more used to answering questions than asking them ourselves. We're going to show you how asking questions can create an engaging experience for your visitors. Asking questions is a great way to better tailor our interactions to a level that's right for our audience. It shows that we're interested in what they have to say and can engage them, encourage them to think deeply about a topic. I'm going to show you 3 types of questions and give you some examples. First, you can ask about their experience level. It's important not to assume what people already know. Some girls may have lots of experience with space and even have their own telescope. Others may have only learned about it in school.
Have you ever looked through a telescope before?
What do you know about Jupiter?
Second, you can ask questions to engage with a girl's outside interests. Here we want to make a connection. Get to know their interests by asking them a question.
So I think that there are opportunities to find your passion point or something you'd like to bring up that kids can also be engaged in, where there's no wrong answer. They can tell you about what their favorite season is or what the weather was on their birthday. I mean, all those kinds of things. So I think, again, don't underestimate the importance of chit chat.
And third, ask questions that encourage further exploration. You want the girls to be able to follow their interests, so it's good to give options. Keep this event girl-led. That's an important part of the Girl Scout experience for both their participation and buy-in.
As a teacher, I'm not for just giving the answer. I want you to do the task, to explore, to have a self-discovery moment. And I'm here to feed you tidbits along the way. If you're stuck and you need, prompting, why do you think that happened?
Chances are I've given them some idea beforehand about what they're going to be observing, But once they're at the telescope, they're at the eyepiece, I want it to be their experience. So I just ask them to describe to me what they're seeing. It's as simple as that. Give them some license to have an experience that's not any way coached by me.
Now let's get to something we do all the time, answering questions. Here we offer 2 tips, and you can find more below in the resources. The first tip is to give context, not just an answer. Often when visitors ask a question, they're trying to engage.
How far away is the sun?
Wow, that's a really good question. It is actually tricky to answer, because one answer is just really far away, but we should put a number on it, right? And that number would be 93 million miles. Now that too doesn't necessarily mean very much, right? Now, imagine you break the speed limit and you actually drive at 100 miles an hour and you drive nonstop, 24 hours a day, all the time. Then it would take you 100 years to get to the sun. So that gives you some idea of how far away the sun is, right? You have to pack a lot of snacks for that trip.
Yeah.
So you make it all the way there, not get hungry along the way.
The second technique is to encourage visitors to figure out a part of the question themselves. This can take a little more time, but is a much more powerful way of learning than telling someone a fact.
We have a Challenger Learning Center here, and we have a mission to Mars, and there are built-in life-threatening, emergencies. And we're waiting for those moments where they go, is something wrong, or did I do it wrong? So I might walk up and, what are you experiencing there? What do you think that means? Let's examine the evidence. What's your conclusion?
When you respond to a question by sharing your reasoning, the girl can see herself as a scientist. I have a challenge for you. Pick a question to ask your visitors at the next star party and try it out a few times. See what the response is. Being a guide on the side, not the sage on the stage, is going to make the learning much more powerful.
Okay, so I'm just pausing a little bit so that our online audience can get caught up to where we are. But I think the video offered several tips on how we can ask questions and how we can answer questions without always being the sage on the stage. I know a lot of people get into astronomy outreach because they are just so interested in the topic and they've learned so much and they just want other people to be as interested in the topic as they are. And so when someone asks you a question, the gut instinct is just to answer it for them. But I find that the experience is so much more enriching if you're able to have more of a conversation about it or get them to wonder even further questions based on their first question rather than just hearing an answer. And so I'm going to offer everyone the opportunity now just to think about what might be a question that you could ask. Sorry. You know, how might you change any of the questions that you thought about before that you might typically ask using the new information from this video? Go ahead and type those into the chat, or if Andrew or Harry had some ideas.
One possible idea about my original question, can you identify the pole star or the northern star or Polaris, is to say, what is the name of the pole star? Is it the pole star? Is it the North Pole star? Is it Polaris? And then I'll see when the answers come back, say, well, which do you think is the right answer?
Excellent. So you're opening it up. You're making it not just a close-ended question with a one correct answer, right? And you might even be able to even open it up even further by asking, do you know the names of any stars? And then talk about trying to find them in the sky, right? Because then you're immediately accessing any knowledge that a participant might have rather than just that one narrow idea. Mm-hmm. Teresa, have you got any other examples from other folks?
Sure. I'm not sure what our folks on Facebook or YouTube are asking, but for me, I think the most crucial question is that one we mentioned in the video, which is, have you looked through a telescope before? Because everyone has an answer for that. Either they have or they haven't. And the answer might be, yes, I built one when I was 7. I went to a workshop and it was so exciting. Or it might be like, no, I don't even know where to look. But all of the ranges of in between are still a great way to tailor what you're going to be sharing with them in discussion. Finding out where they're, if it's their first time looking through the telescope, that might be even more exciting.
Right, but not to assume that they have or haven't based on what might be their outward appearances or age or something like that.
Right. Unfortunately, people judge us right away by mannerisms or speaking patterns or the way we look. And so not doing that just requires a little bit of extra thought. So that question can give us a lot of information.
All right. Yeah, and then to maybe address the question Andrew asked about, are there people on Mars? You know, have people visited Mars? And, you know, again, you could make that slightly more broad, slightly less right or wrong, right? You could say, what do you think it might be like on Mars? You know, what do you see when we look at Mars? People a long time ago thought that they saw canals on Mars. Can you see why they might have thought that? You know, that kind of stuff. I mean, it depends on your scope, how well you might be able to see those things or not. But, you know, those are slightly more open-ended questions that we could ask.
Yeah, another question that is in the video is, what do you know about Jupiter? That's a great way to get some information, and then you can build on that, because you want to have like an exchange. A lot of us get into our spiels when we're at the telescope and we want to say everything we know about Jupiter or just use the things that we're accustomed to saying, but just switching it up a little bit by asking them what do they know, it can be a fun way to interact with people.
All right. So next, we'd like everyone listening to consider how they would use something from this video. How would you pick a question for the next time? What's an example question you might start with? All right. And someone online, Mary Angela says, why can't the moon be made of cheese? That's a great question.
I'm laughing because my husband asks that all the time just to like poke at me.
That's great. I haven't actually facilitated a star party in a long time, but I definitely think, asking about people's experience having looked through a telescope is definitely a great icebreaker, because then you know whether you should be asking more about their experiences with different telescopes or pointing out the parts of the telescope, depending on what their answer is.
In a way, it's kind of a neat time because of that. Like, a lot of us have been doing virtual outreach or not in-person outreach because of COVID, and now that hopefully things will be changing, and we might be doing more in-person events, we're going to be renewing those ideas and sharing the ways we share the universe. So it's a kind of nice time to think about why we do what we do and how to do it.
Actually, I have a question. Now that we have the pandemic, in the last couple of years, things have changed a lot in terms of star parties being, shut down in many places because of regional health restrictions and such. But the flip side there's been a lot of virtual online streaming star parties that have popped up. Is there any difference or in terms of these issues when we're talking about online versus in-person outreach events?
Yes and no. I think virtually we've learned that there's so many benefits to doing it online, such as that people can watch it over and over again, and people can connect from wherever they are in the world if they want to stay up real late for some of them. But it's just about trying to do these questions that we're asking are really about connecting with the person who's on the other end of the screen. So, or who's writing in the chat, or who's putting their comments in. So still, it's the same kind of thing. What do you know about Jupiter can be answered in the chat. And we also have so many online tools like breakout rooms and polls. And so the more interactive you can be, I think it will start to not replicate the in-person event, but just open up the interactivity for virtual events.
I'm just looking online. We've got a couple of suggested questions too that people are. Let me just share that here. Hold on. Let me get it. Here's one from Facebook by Carolyn. She says, "What is the etymology of the word planet?"
Oh, very cool.
And then there's another one here by Laura on Facebook who says, is asking, are you able to see the man in the moon, or do you see a rabbit, or nothing?
That's awesome, because people can draw on their personal cultural heritage to tell you what they see, or really just their own creativity too. That's a really great open-ended question. Thank you for sharing those. Very great. All right. So our next topic is actually misconceptions. All right, so a misconception goes by many different names. A lot of the times we can look at misconceptions as building blocks of people on the path going from sort of a naive idea that people build and develop because it's based on the evidence right in front of them that they interact with. But then as they move on to more complex situations, those simple ideas don't always apply as well. And you'll hear about this a little bit in the video, but the idea that closer is more. So if you're closer to a fire, it's hotter. Or if you're closer to a sound, it's louder. In research-based studies, these are called P-prims. And, it's these simple ideas that you learn from experience from the day you're born, but that don't always apply when you get to more complicated ideas and tasks, like why it's warmer in Northern Hemisphere summer. Closer is no longer a concept that applies to warmer. So let's see, sorry. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and watch the next video. But before we do, why don't you think of a misconception you've heard during an observing event or outreach activity? And you can either share those here in Zoom, or you can share these in the chat. And Andrew, if you see any more, you can let us know.
Will do.
I have got a beauty. It wasn't a misconception that I heard in person. It was one of these sort of, did you hear this on the internet afterwards? And it was that wonderful moment when someone, I think it was about a 6 or 7 year old, was watching the eclipse in America in 2017 and instantly went to a live camera feed, stuck a microphone under her. What do you think of that? First response, is the moon the same size as the sun?
That's awesome. Yeah, and what a great learning opportunity. They observed something and it made sense to them, but because it's such a complicated topic, it didn't quite work. So I think you'll hear in the video an excellent way to respond to something like that. Andrew, do we have any other ideas from online?
Yeah, Carolyn puts out, does the Earth spin clockwise? Or maybe they'll say counterclockwise. That's one. Here's one from Robin. Earth's shadow makes the moon look like a crescent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And another one from Laura. Sirius, the star, is actually the North Star.
Ah, okay.
Because it's the brightest.
Because it's the brightest, sure.
And how about the star color is due to how far away they are, from Nicola.
Oh, that's very interesting. I've not heard that one, but very cool. All right. It's people using their brains and trying to puzzle things out. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing this PowerPoint and I'm going to share the next video.
We can just see a gray square.
As science
Yeah, we can't
communicators,
see it.
we get asked
Oh, yeah, it was just grayed out.
questions. So we might be more used to answering questions than asking them ourselves. We're going to
Recording in progress.
Oh, there we go. Nope, still gray. Can't hear, no. No, can't see.
I know, Andrew, if you happen to have that one loaded up, I'm
Let
going to
me
keep
see
looking.
if I can do that. I can try. but I don't think I can shoot on, oh, wait, let me see.
A lot of misconceptions about astronomy that we...
No, it's not working there. Hold on.
I can also share.
You want to try sharing there, Teresa? Maybe that would help, yeah.
No problem.
It's good that we have multiple copies. oh. Just resizing it and it should be good.
Yes. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that.
Yeah.
Let's play it and see how it goes.
As science communicates,
And it's the one we just watched. Sorry.
Well, you guys have such amazing videos. These are so well made. So,
Oh,
yeah.
thank you. We worked with a filmmaker here in the Bay Area that was really great. Hold on just 1 second.
Sure. Oh, so, you know, Lindsay, there's more questions coming in too. Another question somebody asked, Carolyn has, so many asteroids are named after goddesses. Can you name one?
Oh, that's a really cool question from the first segment. Yeah, that's a really inviting question, and yeah, and girl focused too.
Okay, I have the right one now.
Okay.
There's a lot of misconceptions about astronomy that we have to deal with on a regular basis when we engage with the public. How can we respond to these misconceptions in a way that's encouraging? While we can't always change those that are holding firm to their misbelief, visitors are often coming with a curious, open mind, not with hard-held beliefs. They're trying to engage with you. So think of it as a way of making a connection, a kind of conversational gift. And just like with a real gift, even if it isn't something you really want, you can still appreciate the thought behind it and say thank you. There's many ways to tackle misconceptions, from ignoring them to addressing them head on with the science. Each of them has their place, and it helps to know your audience. We're going to share one method here that many have found effective, and you can find more in the documents below. We call this method the yes and sandwich. First, even if this is a misconception that really pushes your buttons, take a deep breath and respond gently and warmly. Don't jump to "you're wrong," because that's not going to change anyone's mind. Start by repeating the part of the statement that's right first.
Some people think that the seasons are caused by the Earth's distance from the sun, and I can see why they think that. I mean, it's true with a campfire.
Then offer some information about how we know what we know. You can add a gentle correction or not. If it isn't that important, it's okay to let it be.
Did you know that we're closest to the sun in January each year? While it's summer in the southern hemisphere then, it doesn't explain our northern winter. Then I give them an easy way to remember what actually causes the seasons. It's the length of the days and the angle of the sun rays.
Then return to what you're demonstrating or showing in the telescope.
Here, would you like to see the sun safely with the solar filter?
This astronomer responded to the situation and encouraged the visitors' interest in astronomy. That's what we want to do. There's a lot of things that can interfere with a good viewing experience. So be sure that the language you use focuses on the equipment. The telescope needs focusing. A telescope needs a different eyepiece, rather than "you're doing it wrong."
I think for us particularly, what might be best is If you start like this, because everybody's a different height, it's always hard to have the telescope in the perfect position for everybody. So how about you put both your knees on here, and you can put your hands right here, and that probably allows you to be nice and stable. You can hold onto the chair and then just kind of lean forward and gently look through the telescope.
I don't really see anything.
Here's an example of an interaction which isn't a misconception, but still needs attention. Sometimes when we're at a star party, we can see that someone has a blank look on their face after looking through the telescope. And you know that they didn't see what you're showing them. Let's look at how this astronomer deals with this situation.
I don't really see anything.
So go ahead and get close until you gently feel this. You don't want to squish against it. Just get close. And then you can move your head around a little bit if you have to, right? So maybe move it up or down a little bit, or left or right. It's kind of like trying to look through a straw, right? Imagine a straw. If you want to look through that hole in the straw, right, you have to line up just correctly with it, right? Except here it's a little harder because you don't actually see the straw, right? The straw is kind of hidden in the telescope. So you have to move your head around and try to find it. So give it another shot.
Okay.
So what's the misconception that really gets under your skin? See if you can apply this method. Can you find one part of the misconception that's right? It can help to practice with a friend. Just like scientists, visitors' understanding of the universe is evolving all the time. So we can either shut them down and ensure that they don't ask any more questions, or we can invite them to learn more.
All right, thank you, team, for making that happen. We can go back to our PowerPoint. All right, so I found the tips in that video very helpful and very instructive. And so now I'd like you to think back to any of those misconceptions you might have heard or some that we discussed, and think about how you might be able to respond to any of the misconceptions from before using this new yes and sandwich, as Teresa called it. I don't know, Harry, do you have any thoughts on how you might say that to the person right after the eclipse?
You put a great comment in the chat.
That's right. I've said as an answer, yes, it does look like the sun and the moon are the same size, but the sun is actually further away from us than the moon. Can you think, therefore, why they look the same size?
That's perfect. And just like in some of those the other video, you're really counting on the person to use their own reasoning and become that scientist, that explorer, by posing the question that way. That's a really great turnaround. Awesome. Do we have any other suggestions about how people might use the yes and format to help when they've heard a misconception? You can type in the chat. Andrew will look on Facebook, see if we have any more.
We have one from Laura. Let me see. What is Siri? She says Sirius is an important star and quite bright, but it's only visible about half the year. The North Star can be seen all year from our location.
Awesome. Great application. Good. All right. All right. So, and that's sort of the formula here. You restate the aspect of what they're observing that is right, exactly what they see. They're, or you could say that's an interesting tidbit, but maybe that's not something that applies right here in this situation. And then you move on to a correction and redirect back to what you're observing.
An interesting point here. Somebody's putting in just a comment from, let me see, where is it here? From Facebook, from Mary Angela. She says she believes that empathy first should be when you're approaching somebody, and then any one of the approaches that you guys have been presenting. That's what she said.
Right. So I can understand why you think that, that's a really great observation. Yes, it does seem closer when you're hotter, or hotter when you're closer to a campfire, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's great.
That is very true. We are, okay. I was gonna mention this.
Oh, okay. All right. So some common misconceptions that often get brought up are, as I've been talking about, the seasons are caused by Earth changing its distance. The moon has a dark side that's always in darkness. There's only one solar system, right? Flying through an asteroid field is dangerous, right? There's famous movies that show us that. That there's no gravity on the moon because gravity is only on the Earth. The North Star is the brightest in the sky. We've already had some examples on that one. Stars are fixed and eternal. They never die or change. Here's a favorite from the internet, right? Mars will be as big as the full moon in the sky. And astrology or astronomy are the same thing. All right. So let's see. Harry, what have you got to say? How might you change any of these?
The asteroid field, exactly. How many times have we seen a great big science fiction epic? They have to go through a section of space and there's an asteroid field in the way. Brian Cox, brilliant British astronomer, world famous now, he said no, because when Jupiter and Saturn moved through, they scattered all of the things. This is why Ceres, the biggest in the whole asteroid field, suggests that there should be loads, and yet there aren't.
Right. So if someone told you that, though, how could you use that yes and formula? Oh, Vivian was making a suggestion. Great.
I had this one and I thought about it too. And we didn't always know the answer to that. Scientists didn't know that for the longest time. And when we first sent the first missions through the asteroid field, we weren't exactly sure what was going to happen because we didn't know what the smallest size particles might look like. It could have looked something like we imagine in Star Wars, but we learned that it's actually very, very rare that something might hit an asteroid in the asteroid belt. They're so few and far between. Kind of shows some of the process of science too. Like it's not just a canon of facts. We are learning all the time as well.
Vivian just reminded me of the astrology and the astronomy issue, which for me was a really hot button topic because it just pushes my buttons. And I think when you're in the field for a long time, you do have those questions that you're like, again? But what I've started to say is that astrologers have given us a lot of great information about the positions of the planets, so much so that scientists were able to develop the ideas they have about planetary motion. And then I'm looking at Saturn right now. Would you like to see that planet in the sky? So there are a lot of reasons why people think the way they think. And as the person said, empathy is a great place to start.
Great, thank you. And I was attempting to point out, but I had not unmuted myself, that Vivian used the people used to think that, right? And in some ways, that's how Teresa was also approaching the astrology, is that, yes, people did make these observations and believed certain things about them. And now we have new observations and new information that's changed how we think, blah, 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 right? All right, let's see. Anyone else? I don't know. Andrew, do you want to pipe in on how you might address any of these?
Well, definitely the North Star. I see that constantly, always, every time, I'm out with people. It's like, oh yeah, that must be the brightest star. And even in a casual conversation, I get that, right? Because North Star is just, and it would make sense. I think, the whole idea of empathy is what really I think is the starting point, is that you have to kind of see it from a person who obviously has maybe not that rich a background in the field of astronomy, and it just makes sense. North Star, it's a guiding star. It's so much in popular culture. It would make sense, doesn't it? I would say, doesn't it? It would make sense that would be the brightest star. But it's not really. What's fascinating is that it isn't. It's not its brightness. It's actually its position in the sky, and it's that it's fixed, and it's the whole sky rotates around it, and that's what makes it so special and eye-catching in a sense. So
awesome. Great. Thank you for modeling some of these and trying on the fly to answer these questions. So that's great. Thank you. And I appreciate that you're also fielding all the questions on Facebook at the same time. Are there any more we should talk about before we move on?
No, that's it for now.
I just want to say I love that empathy comment. I think that really does, I feel that in a big way. I think about myself if I were going to approach a subject I didn't know much about, like botany or, something that I would ask questions that might seem really off the mark, but only because I'm interested, only because I didn't know what else to ask.
Yeah, and astronomy is a very intimidating field. That's what I'm getting from talking with people, is that many times they shy away from asking a question. Many people do. Because they go, well, I have a question, but it's a stupid question. I think it's stupid, and then they go like that, and they're shying away from actually asking it. And there is no stupid question, I mean, and it's you're curious. People are curious naturally, so it's really making people feel comfortable enough to let those guards down, and having that true connection. I think during outreach events, that's very important, that make people feel comfortable and excited to want to share their thoughts.
Right. And that's part of that yes and technique. You're validating the part that they did notice, that they did know, that they did get correct, before moving on to pointing out some other ideas, right, that they didn't have.
Oh, absolutely. I remember in the immediate aftermath of the Siberian meteoroid that became global news when it exploded over Siberia. One of the first questions I answered after it on the internet was, it was headed for us, wasn't it? And I said, well, yes, but its size meant it couldn't get all the way down to us.
Mm-hmm. All right. So because we're hoping that this information has been useful, we really want you to think about for a moment, and maybe share if you're comfortable, how you might use something from this video during your next interaction with a female learning about our one sky. So I also really liked the part of the video where the scientist or the telescope facilitator was assisting someone who wasn't quite seeing what they were expected to be seeing in the telescope, because oftentimes I personally have seen telescope facilitators sort of grab the eyepiece away from the person and, and I really liked that they stepped back and they gave some gentle instruction about how to look through the telescope, which, as the video pointed out, it's not a misconception, but it was a way of correcting what was going on to have a more successful observing experience.
Well, I kind of have a question about that, like a practical, in terms of when people do come to the telescope. Many times I find it's also this expectation of what the views are going to be like through a telescope, and how you handle that as a person who's doing the outreach, as a guide. Any ideas of like how to frame that kind of approach when, sometimes, let's say it's a galaxy and they're going to expect something like the Hubble Space Telescope picture, at a galaxy. And, you have to kind of frame it and still keep them engaged, right? You have that awe and wonder feeling, keep going.
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead,
I'm happy to share what I do. So, we see so much online through a screen, and there's nothing quite like seeing those photons that have come only to your eye, kind of personalizing it, so that it might not be a Hubble picture, but those photons left that galaxy however long ago, and they have made it all the way to your eye, and nowhere else. You're the only one getting to see that right this very second, that piece of information. And I think kind of like going to a museum and seeing artifacts, these these views are a little bit like artifacts that we get to experience differently than something we watch or see online.
Yeah, Vivian, I really like when you said personalizing. It really is, isn't it? That's part of the connection and the empathy, the personalization at that moment there with the telescope.
And giving some context, like what was happening when that light left that galaxy, if it's, Andromeda, or say it's been traveling since the dinosaurs, or who knows how long, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Able to give that.
One of the things that the Night Sky Network does is has resources for folks to download. And there's a great set of cards that you can print out and keep by your telescope, which are sort of comparing magnification and resolution and what those words mean. And also one thing is a little card that comes with it where it's like a backyard telescope is like the head of a push pin, and the Hubble Space Telescope is more like a hole punch. So there's I'm sorry, did I switch those? Yes.
View that each you're seeing. So the Hubble just sees this very tiny thing where we might be able to see, I think we did we punched a hole with a hole punch at arm's length. I think a backyard telescope sees about that much of the sky. So you're seeing a bigger amount of the sky than Hubble, which you can talk about too. But you had the right idea, Teresa.
Yeah, sorry. Just a miscommunication in my speaking. But yeah, it's a really great set that you can use for those type of questions, especially visual ones, because seeing the pictures and seeing what's going on in the telescope makes a good companion piece.
We have on Facebook another comment here from Mary Angela. She says in her public events, she dedicates a large telescope to operate normally with a digital camera and what she says real software, so that we can explain how professional observations work. And then they leave the other smaller telescopes to be used with oculars to allow for the thrill of visitors that they really kind of long for, that the visitors do.
Great. And Vivian has shared with me a link where we can get some of those additional resources. I don't know if Andrew's able to share that to Facebook, but we can definitely put that into our online discussion in our members area. So if you aren't yet an AWB online community member, you should join. And once you start getting emails from me to fill in your profile and things, you can go check out the online discussion. Those of you who are already members, of course, can jump right in. And both Vivian and Teresa are now members of AWB as well. So they can jump in and answer questions as well. But we'd really like you, if you feel like, committing yourself to a goal, you can share your thoughts about how you're going to change your practice after this experience today.
And we have just so that Lindsay, I've put the our website online there, www.astronomerswithoutborders.org is where people can go and visit our site, sign up, you can become a free member and join the discussion, be part of it.
Right. And we also have a full calendar of Global Astronomy Month events that are happening throughout the rest of April.
Oh, yes.
So you can find those online as well. If you have any questions, you can email me at education@astronomerswithoutborders.org. And I saw this in some of ASP's previous presentations, but I loved it. Thank you. By watching, you're already showing up for girls. So we are so thankful that you participated with us today. And thank you, Vivian and Teresa, for your time today, as well as Harry for being our brave online participant.
You're welcome. It's lovely to be here and to share this information and talk about it with you.
I loved your ideas, Harry. Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
that's
great.
Not a problem at all. Glad to be of help.
Right. Thank you.